Welcome to List Comprehension lecture. So list comprehension is an elegant way to define and create a list in Python. It relies heavily on for loops and significantly reduces the lines of code needed. And with less lines of code means less chance for error. So let's start off with our typical for loop, where we're going to have a variable called cosmos equal to an empty list, and then we're going to do for I in a string called universe colon. We'll do cosmos dot append I, and then we'll run the outputs. And as you can see here, we have a total of 8 strings, which are each of the letters from the string universe. Okay, so that is a total of 4 lines of code. And how can we do this with a list comprehension? Well, when we do list comprehension, we always start off with square brackets, and then we do, let's say, u for u in universe. And we have the exact same output, but with only 1 line of code. So it's far less chance of error with a list comprehension, though it's somewhat less readable. And as a consequence, for people who want to make their code readable to those who are not familiar, it's perhaps best to use this above method as opposed to the list comprehension. There's even a simpler way than using this list comprehension, and that's to do list universe, and you get the exact same output. However, this is limited to only a single string, and unlike with list comprehension and the for loop, this method here is just based upon strings. Okay, so moving on, just going to scroll down, and let's say we do norm equals an empty for n in range 0 to 11 colon, say results equals n raised to the power of 2 norm dot append results, and then we'll do norm. And as you can see here, what's happening is that it's grabbing all of the numbers from this range, which is 0 to 10, and that's raising it to the power of 2. So for instance, if we did not do to the power of 2, it would just be 0 to 10. We just undo that. So as you can see, it's basically 10 multiplied by itself, which gives 100. 9 multiplied by itself gives 81, and so on and so forth. So how would we convert this into a list comprehension? Whereby we have, if you hit on the white space here, hit L, 5 lines of code, which is quite lengthy. So we can do this all in one line. Let's do X. So we do the calculation here for X in range 0 to 11. And as you can see, you have the exact same output. And what we can also do is assign it as a variable, comp, and then we do comp, and you have the same output. Okay, so moving on from that, just scroll down, and now we'll do a list of pets, and we'll say cat, dog, rabbit, duck, mouse, doesn't matter if it's uppercase, and let's say, whoops, and let's say piglets. Okay, just make that a bit clearer. Pets, there we go, and that's kind of bugging me actually, the uppercase, so just make that M, lowercase. And let's say we do ras equals empty. We'll do for I in range len pets colon res equals pets I. So we're selecting the index of pets one at a time, and plus is hungry. And then we do rads dot append res, and then we do the output of rads. And if we just hit here, okay, so we've got cat is hungry all the way down to piglet is hungry. So if you ignore these 2 lines here, we have a total of 4 lines of code, and we can of course do list comprehension, whereby we can just do that with 1 line of code. So we start off with square brackets, and what we do is pets I for, or rather we do pets plus is hungry for I in range len pets. There we go. So it's the exact same effect, or the exact same output, and it's far more elegant than the typical means of going about writing a for loop. And generally, Python is arguably the most elegant language out there compared to all the others. Okay, so moving on, let's say we do numbers, raise that to the power of 3 for numbers in range 0 to 11. So nothing exciting here. But what we can also do is a condition. So if numbers is greater than or equal to 8. Great. So 512, 729 to 1000. And if we were to convert this list comprehension into a for loop, what we can do is count empty for num in range 0 to 11, colon, oops, it's colon, not semicolon, if num greater than or equal to 8, put a colon there, new equals num, raise to the power of 3, or cubed, you could say, count.append new, and then we do count. And you have the exact same output. And as you can see, we have a total of 6 lines of code. So this is far more inefficient than the list comprehension. And what we can also do is, let's say if num is greater than or equal to 8, and let's say numbers modulus 2 is equal to 0. Let's just change this to something else. Let's say 3. As you can see here, we have 664, 216, 512, and 1000. So we don't have the 729 that we had before. If we were to change this, get different outputs. So it's all of the odd numbers that have been cubed. Okay. And of course we can do the same here with just simply and num modulus 2 equal to 1, and just change this to this here, of course, to 3, and have the exact same output. Okay, so as you can probably notice, when we're doing a list comprehension, what we're doing is ignoring this here. We don't need this because we're already in square brackets, and also because we're in square brackets, we don't have to use the append function. And as you can see here, the if num greater than or equal to 3 and num modulus 2 equal to 1 is essentially the same as what we have here. Instead of num, it's numbers, and with the if. So all of this line here is essentially the same as this line here. And we have the 4 numbers in range, which is what we have here, but without the semicolon for the list comprehension. And then you have the numbers cubed, which is here. Okay, so moving on from that, what we're going to do now is, let's say growth equals empty for grow in range 0 to 20, colon, if grow modulus 2 is equal to 0 and grow is greater than 2, colon, growth, dot append grow, and we'll do growth. Great, so you have 4 all the way to 18, and if we were to do list comprehension here, G for G in range 0 to 20, if G modulus 2 is equal to 0 and grow, or rather G, is greater than 2. Great, okay. So that concludes my lecture on list comprehension. If you have any questions, feel free to ask, and I look forward to seeing you in the next lecture. Thanks. Welcome to list comprehension exercise. So we have a total of 4 tasks here. Task 1 is convert for loop to list comprehension, which is a pretty important skill. So essentially, you have this code here. If you were to run this code, you get this output here. But what I want you to do is convert this code into a list comprehension so you can have the same output that we have here, 30 to 39. And the only hints I'm going to give for this list comprehension is that it doesn't have an append function or an empty list. So moving on to the second task is convert while loop into list comprehension. Now don't worry, you're not going to be using a while within the list comprehension. All I want is that when you're using this while loop, you have this output here, and so you're going to have a list comprehension that also generates the same kind of output, or the exact same output, 0 to 8. So all these even numbers here with the string the number is. And the only hints I'm going to give are just like the above task, where you have no empty list and no append function. And then you have task 3, which is control flow with modulus in list comprehension. You've got the desired output here, and the only hints are multiply d by 2 asterisks and a 3, or you can do pow, which is a Python built-in function with d3 as an example. Then the second hint is use range 20, use an if condition, use modulus where d %2, and use d greater than 10. And then lastly, we have the task 4, create 2 nested list comprehensions inside a dictionary. So you have the output here for D2 and D3. So these 2 dictionaries here. And what I want you to do is in D2, for K1 and K2, you have a list comprehension, hence the square brackets for both of them. And you're going to generate these numbers here from 0 to 84 and from 0 to 81. And then for D3, you're going to grab the K1 and K2 lists, and you're going to sum them, both of them, and then add them together. So the hints are, 1, use the built-in Python function sum twice for K3 dictionary, and 2, for K1, use g plus 20 times g with range 10 and g less than 5. For K2, e times e with range 20 and e less than 10. So these will both enable you to generate the values that you see in both K1 and K2 for the dictionary D2. So for instance, if let's say we have a range of 10 and it's the elements that we're multiplying is less than 5, that means it's going to be 0 to 4. So we're going to have 0 to 4, 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And let's say g, for instance, is 4. So we have 4 plus 20 times 4. So that's going to be 20 times 4 is 80, plus 4 is 84, which is what we have here. And then lastly, you have the use an if statement for both list comprehensions in K1 and K2. So don't worry if you're not able to achieve the same output. Just to reiterate regarding sum, what you do is that you use the sum for both of these list comprehensions. So you'll put sum here, and then you'll put parentheses around both of them. So open parentheses and close parentheses, and this should give you a value, a final single value for all of the values here, so they'll be added up together. And the same with K1 as well. And then you're going to add the summations of both K1 and K2 into K3. Okay, so that concludes my overview of this exercise. Good luck, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask. If you aren't able to get the same output, don't worry, I'll show you in the solutions. Thanks. Welcome to List Comprehension Solutions. So for task 1, convert for loop to list comprehension. What we have to do is work with this code here, and then we have to convert this into a list comprehension and get this output here from 30 to 39, which is equivalent to the output that we have for the for loop. So all the hints that we have for this are that we don't use the append function or an empty list. And all we have to do is, of course, start off with square brackets, Then we do I plus, it should be I, lowercase I, plus 30 for I in range 10. There we go, so 30 to 39. So all it's doing is simply adding on 30 to each of the elements. If it weren't for this here, it would simply be 0 to 9, as you can see here. Just undo that. Okay, great. So moving on to the second task, convert while loop into a list comprehension. And again, we're working with this code here. And don't worry, we're not going to be putting a while within the list comprehension. So all we're doing is just trying to get the same output as we would from this while loop. So we have these even outputs of 0, 2, 4, 6, and 8. So all we have to do here is simply take this line here and use a list comprehension. Okay, so we do a square brackets as always, and do a string. The number is plus string x. So as you can see, it's the same as what we have here, minus the s and the equal sign. For x in range, let's just do 10 for now, and scroll down here. As you can see, we have a slight problem. We don't want 0 to 9, we want all the even numbers. Now, there's two ways of approaching this problem. One is that we do 0, 10, and 2, and you get 0 to 8, exactly the same as what we have here. Or what we can do is do 10 if x modulus 2 is equal to 0, and we should get the exact same output as you can see here. So usually there's multiple solutions to the same problem when it comes to programming especially. So scrolling down, now we've got task 3, which is control flow with modulus in list comprehension, which is kind of similar to what we just did before with task 2. So here we just have these very somewhat large integers, so these thousandths numbers. Okay, so what we're going to do is start off, of course, with a square brackets for list comprehension. Then we do d cubes for d in range 20 if d modulus 2 is equal to 0 and d is greater than 10. Great, so we have the exact same output. If we were to change this to let's say 1, we get slightly different numbers. Okay, so moving on from that, we now have task 4, our final task, which is create 2 nested list comprehensions inside a dictionary. This is quite a tough one. So what we're doing is putting a list comprehension in both K1 and K2, which are the keys of the dictionary D2, and then we're going to grab those and add them together and sum them to get the final value of 495. Okay, so what we do is start off with creating a D2, and we'll do K1. We're just going to put the colons there. Okay. Alright, so what we want to do for K1 is G plus 20 times G for G in range 10 if G is less than 5. Then we do D2. And as you can see here, we have 0 to 84, exactly like we have for K1. Okay, and then we'll just extend this to do K2 now. So K2 colon square brackets. What it's asking for is E times E for range 20 and E less than 10. So all we do is E times E for E in range 20 if E is less than 10. And we run this, and I'm just going to scroll down to make some space here. Do D2, As you can see here, we have 0 to 81, and that should hopefully be the same. It is 0 to 81. Okay, so now what we want to do is D3, and all we do here for D3 is K3, and then we'll do sum D2 K1, then plus D2, or rather we're going to do sum D2 K2, and that should be it for this task. Great, so we've got 495. I hope that's been interesting for you, and I hope you found that insightful. Thank you.